Okay, I'm going to knock another one out. Pardon that phrase. Sorry, let me just adjust this. Yeah, so this is about individualism versus, for want of a better word, tribalism. So in other words, people being themselves and thinking independently and then acting on those thoughts or beliefs that they've independently arrived at, versus people who just follow. And I want to draw a few comparisons as well to make the point. So look, one of the things that, for better or worse, I didn't realise, but I realise now that I always have been, is very much an individual. So when I was at school, I mean secondary school really, but yeah, I was into a certain type of music that really hardly, in fact, nobody else was into in my year or in the school for that matter. In fact, I don't think there's hardly anybody else ever into it, but it's basically kind of like fairly abstract jazz, right? I was a bit of a snob, frankly, about it. I'm not proud of that, but I was genuinely into it, really liked it. And I hated things like musicals. I thought most pop music was crap, and I could see it for what it was, which was just like commercial, superficial, shite. Hated the Beatles, still do. Thought the Rolling Stones were crap too, but probably better than the Beatles because they just stuck to a very they didn't do it. They didn't play around with anything. So they did the rock and roll template and they stuck to it. They plagiarized it, obviously, but they stuck to it, right? So that means what happens then is it doesn't age so obviously as the music of the Beatles, which is horrible. And there's a whole thing about the Beatles anyway, not being who they are. Certainly Paul McCartney, but that's another subject, right? Yeah, and I'm not the expert on that by any stretch. If I'm not an expert on anything, so but kind of back to individualism. That's what I mean by being an individual, right? So all the other kids at school were into different music, and all the other kids at school, I think every single person other than me went to see Grease when it came out. And the reason I didn't go to see it is I didn't want to, because I'm not into musicals, and I fucking hate that music, and I'm not into watching twats in America. No issue with Americans, by the way, but doing twattish stuff on Grease in that film, Grease. I just no interest in it whatsoever. And everyone was sort of saying, why haven't you seen Grease? And I was thinking, I don't want to see it, right? So I didn't choose to not see it because everyone else was seeing it. But at the same time, there was no way that I was going to go and watch Grease. I wonder if I'm hearable. Oh, no. Oh, yes, I am. So, sorry, this is about a Bluetooth problem I've got. So, yeah, that's an example of being an individual for me, right? Is you just have a preference, a belief, and you stick to that because it's like it's you, it's part of who you are, right? And it's what you choose to do, and you're unaffected. You might be affected a bit. I think we're all influenced to a degree, but you're not going to be affected enough to change that view by just the views of others. You need to arrive at your own decision. And I guess I look back now, you kind of realise at a very young age, you're encouraged to be part of a group or a tribe. When you get older, it's part of a football club or it's voting, politics. You have to ask the question, why is that? Why are people encouraged to be part of something? Part of a belief system or a supporter of a pop... Oh, there's a guy with a mask on, what an idiot. He's just got out of his car, he's got a fucking mask over his face. He's been in the car, he's now got out, and he's taken the fucking mask off. So he's had the mask on in the car. Sorry, I'm in a car park. He's had the mask on whilst in the car, but he's got out of the car now and he's taken the mask off. So what? Oh, God, anyway. There you go, there's an example. But that is about following something without thinking through the insanity of what you're doing. So, anyway, that's me being an individual, right? One of the things I noticed, and there's relevance to this, does link in. Around about 2015, 2016, I was hiring cars a lot. I won't go into the reasons why, but I was, which meant I got to drive lots of different cars. And to cut a long story short, I got allocated a Ford Focus at one point. I was like, oh shit, I don't want a Ford Focus. This is from Avis. Anyway, when I saw it, I thought, well, that's not a Ford, that's a BMW. It wasn't, it was a Ford. But Jesus, it looked the spitting image of a BMW 1 Series. It checked that had a Ford Focus badge on the back. Even the interior was very similar to that of a BMW. And that experience then had me looking at cars generally ever since. And the thing I've noticed is how cars these days, they just seem to, it's like, the sort of homogeneity of, this kind of everything just feels very similar. Right, very difficult to tell a lot of these cars. I mean, there was a time I could tell you the make of a car and the model when I was younger by the headlights in the dark. That's how individual and different cars were. You'd have no hope now, none. It's difficult enough when it's daylight to see what's you've got to be able to see what the badge is normally to know what the bloody car make is. And why would that be? So why am I linking that in with individualism? I'll tell you why. Because the car is the extension. In many cases, a person chooses a car. And I think for a lot of people, I'm not saying I've done that. I don't actually. No, I do it because I like the car. But a lot of people buy a car and it's kind of a bit of an extension of who they are. Because it's literally an extension of their body, isn't it? It's an extension of the legs. It's to get you somewhere. So you have a quite close relationship, I think, with a car. Or you can do. I mean, people can give them genders. So the reality here is that I think you see this, and maybe if I looked in other areas, you'd see it elsewhere as well, maybe in houses, in architecture, this general move away from, houses looking different to each other, cars being distinctly different from each other. Because all those things make sense. To do that, if you're a car manufacturer, you want to be different. That's your point of difference. People buy you for your point. Not anymore. Now, of course, I think we probably know now why, and that is because most of them are owned by the same companies. Yeah, you've got a handful of companies that own all of them. So there's no need to. There's no competition anymore. But with people, the reason they want people to be part of a tribe or align with a certain political perspective, even though surely anyone with any insight at all, any ability to reason would have worked out by now that it doesn't matter what fucking party you support, what the ideals of that party are. In practice, they all do the same thing with a few tweaks, right? They're all pushing the same agenda. People haven't worked that out. Most people haven't, and I don't know why. And so this is my point, right, is that if you have a country or a world full of individuals, you're screwed. You can't control individuals. But if you have a world where you've managed to persuade everybody that it's good to do what other people are doing, the top 10 hit parade or the top 10 singles, so you'll want to buy one of these because everybody else is, that kind of thing. The reason for that is because you've got leaders, right? You have to have a leader of a tribe, a leader of a political party that people follow. And once you've got that, you've then suddenly reduced the amount of work you've got to do to manipulate people. Because before then, it would be 7 or 8 billion individuals. How the fuck are you going to influence all of those people? If they're all individuals, they're all thinking independently. But it's very easy if, let's say, you just think, well, look, in America, we've pretty much just got Democrats and Republicans. Most people are one or the other. Right, and so therefore we've got to do is influence the leadership of both parties, get them on side, whether we influence them or we coerce them or we blackmail them, doesn't matter, compromise them, doesn't matter, but fundamentally they've got reasons, and normally it's beyond their control in the end. They have to do what we tell them to do. So that's why, right, once you've got a tribe, you've got a leader, one leader, you influence that person. If they don't want to do it, you get rid of them and get the right person in. And then that's it. You're leading everybody that's part of that tribe then. That's why. Okay.